If you look at Comey, if you look at McCabe, if you look at probably people higher than that, if you look at Strzok, they want an insurance policy so that should she, for any reason, lose, remember, 100 million to 1. Maybe he said 100 million to nothing. But should she lose, we'll have an insurance policy and we'll get this guy out of office. And that's what they said, and that's what they meant. That's treason. That's treason.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. What an exciting time to be alive. You're going to love this interview with Harley Schlanger and NSA whistleblower Bill Binney. And given the fact that Bill Binney is on as a guest, no better sponsor to plug in this video than Virtual Shield. Now, why are VPNs important? It's simple. VPNs are powerful and extremely useful for well-informed citizens. That's why entire countries are working to ban them. Is the US next? Hopefully not. If we have a republic, your privacy is paramount. And right now you can take advantage of the Memorial Day special with an extra 35% off Virtual Shield. Be sure to use coupon code SGTReport_Memorial35 at checkout. Virtual Shield VPN is one of the easiest to use VPNs in the world and one of the fastest. And their no-log policy protects users from any data breaches. And in a world where the NSA continues to try to gather your data, Virtual Shield hides your IP address and encrypts your internet data so your online activity is out of sight of your internet service provider and other would-be snoopers. And regain control of your privacy with IdentiSafe. Virtual Shield's IdentiSafe blocks your webcam, microphone, securely deletes files, history, and more. So take advantage of the Memorial Day special with an extra 35% off all Virtual Shield plans. Use coupon code SGTReport_Memorial35 at checkout. Now, guys, I want to thank all of you again who discovered the Brave browser and downloaded it. Be sure to install it on your computer. And for those who have not discovered the Brave browser, it's more than twice as fast as Google's Chrome, and it won't spy on you. You'll love it. Give it a try. Once you start using it, you won't go back. So give it a shot. I'll also leave the link for the Brave browser below this video. Now, guys, as you know, DECLAS is coming. President Trump made the announcement. In fact, he demanded that the intelligence agencies get in line and provide all of the documents. This is a wonderful time to be a patriot and a wonderful time for our republic. I have the pleasure of breaking down all of this news with Harley Schlanger and Bill Binney, the former intelligence official at the NSA turned whistleblower. It's my great pleasure to have them both on now. First, Harley, welcome.
Hello, Sean. How are you?
I'm great. I am really great because last night Trump ordered the FBI and the CIA to fully cooperate with Barr's investigation, granting full and complete authority to declassify. This is big, big news. Bill Binney, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Good to be with you guys. Last night, Donald J. Trump tweeted this out. Today, at the request and recommendation of the Attorney General of the United States, President Donald J. Trump directed the intelligence community to quickly and fully cooperate with the Attorney General's investigation into surveillance activities during the 2016 presidential election. The AG has also been delegated full and complete authority to declassify information pertaining to this investigation in accordance with the long-established standards for handling classified information. And in a third tweet, the president said, today's action will help ensure that all Americans learn the truth about the events that occurred. Gentlemen, I'm going to play a soundbite from our president here for you in a second. But first, Harley, I got to tell you, I was watching CNN 20 minutes ago, and guess what the new narrative is? They had a female reporter on from the New York Times who said, you know, with the elections coming up, with 2020 around the corner, this president could be talking about the booming economy, but he wants to revisit something that happened 3 years ago. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not making that. That's the new narrative. Harley, your thoughts?
Well, they need a new narrative because the old narrative is completely broken down. The lies have been exposed. Bill Binney has done an excellent job with his colleagues at the VIPs in attacking the big lie, which is that the Russians hacked into the DNC and the Podesta emails. The whole story of collusion was a fraud from the beginning. And what, Sean, you know that what I've been emphasizing for the longest time is get to the British role. That if you want to look at a foreign intervention, look at what the British did. And the president has been tweeting about this recently in regards to Christopher Steele. And then I think it's extremely important that Roger Stone's attorneys reached out to Bill and have arranged for him to participate in that trial to expose the whole fraud around the WikiLeaks got it from the Russians and so on. So I think the latest developments, in addition to the one you reported, the other thing that's important is Trump talking with Fox News about the military-industrial complex and identifying what Eisenhower first put on the table, which is that you have these people above the elected politicians who are running the wars. And what we've said, what LaRouche PAC has said from the beginning, is the whole Russiagate was about Trump's effort to find cooperation with Russia and China instead of new wars and new arms buildups. So hopefully we're on the right course now.
Bill, your thoughts on DECLAS? We're waiting for this Bucket 5 DECLAS, which is very close. Also, the Horowitz report on FISA abuse. It's all spilling out, Bill. And here's Adam Schiff tweeting out yesterday, in fact. Get this. Adam Schiff tweeting this. While Trump stonewalls the public from learning the truth about his obstruction of justice, Trump and Barr conspire to weaponize law enforcement and classified information against their political enemies. The cover-up has entered a new and dangerous phase. This is un-American. Can you even believe that he would have the audacity and gall to say that? That's exactly what the Democrats did to this president.
Well, that's what they're trying to. They're playing the Wizard of Oz game. You know, look over here. Don't look over. Don't look at us. Look over here. You know, that's because of the crimes they've committed. That's the problem. They don't want anybody unredacting or exposing what they have done in the FISA court or what they've done in the Stellar Wind program at NSA and looking into the domestic collection on President Trump and then elected. Even when he was in the campaign, they were doing that. So and then they had to do a trumped up charge against one of the people in his campaign to try to get a warrant on him. So when that warrant came in, that meant that they could go 2 degrees out from that and look at everybody in the campaign. That was their whole objective. That was to legitimize what they were doing already with the Stellar Wind program at NSA. Plus, I would add that any of the reporting done by NSA that included U.S. citizens and that are minimized, their idents are minimized, they have to request that they be unmasked, and all those records are there. So they need to marry up what's happened in the FISA court and who was involved in that with who was involved in some of the unmasking at NSA. And also look at what kind of data they were using and how often and who they were looking at in the NSA data. There's a cabal here that's involved in this, and you need to follow that cabal, put the collection of people who are involved together, and then see what they were doing all over the place, especially in the NSA database, because it's data on everybody.
Right. Now, let me play a soundbite here with a shout out to my friend Lori Colley's YouTube channel. She posted this yesterday. I had heard it, but this is the easiest way for me to refine the soundbite. This is from President Donald Trump, who names the names, right? Those of us that have been following this narrative, the real news about what happened with the FISA fraud and everything else, we know the names, we have the evidence, but the mainstream Mockingbird media has been weaponized against the people, just like the Democrats have been weaponized against the people, and the deep state has been weaponized against the people and this president. And this president has the moral authority and courage to name the names. I want to play this clip for you guys because he uses a very important word at the end, and that word starts with a T.
They have unsuccessfully tried to take down the wrong person. You look at Comey, if you look at McCabe, if you look at probably people higher than that, if you look at Strzok, if you look at his lover, Lisa Page, his wonderful lover, the two lovers, they talked openly. You know, they didn't use their private server because they didn't want to get caught, so they used the government server. That was not a good move. He talked about the insurance policy just in case crooked Hillary loses, and that didn't work out too well for them. So you look at them, they want an insurance policy so that should she, for any reason, lose, remember, 100 million to 1. Maybe he said 100 million to nothing, but should she lose, we'll have an insurance policy and we'll get this guy out of office. That's what they said, and that's what they meant. That's treason. That's treason.
I'll pause it there. Powerful words, but he's got truth on his side, Harley, and the American people know it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think the more that this unravels, as he said, the more the American people see what was done. You know, it's ironic that they're saying Trump is trying to come up with a conspiracy theory. Well, what was the Russian hacking story? That was a conspiracy theory. we've been subjected to 2.5 years of conspiracy theories spun by the likes of Brennan and Clapper, and using the highest levels of British intelligence, using FBI sting operations, people like Joseph Mifsud, Stefan Halper, and others. And now we're seeing the real conspiracy come out, which was the effort to keep Trump away from the White House. For what reason? To keep the old policies in place. And I think the most important thing is the declassification of these documents should just be a start. And I think it'd be very useful for Bill to give a little bit of a report on the work that he's done on the one thing that was left in the Mueller report, which is the story of the Russian hacking. Because once you take that out, then you see that not only do they have nothing, but it was the most desperate operation ever to carry out a coup against the American people.
Yeah, Bill, I want to ask you about that because I know that your research has vetted out the fact that these Guccifer 2 claims that it was Russia that hacked the the DNC servers. By the way, the DNC would never allow the FBI to take a look at those servers to prove their version of events. Those documents were downloaded locally at 49 megabits per second, which is impossible for it to have been done by the Russians. And you vetted that out with hardcore research, haven't you?
Yes, we also did trials of it to try to see how quickly we could get data across the Atlantic to Europe. I had some friends in Europe who would cooperate and tried to pull data from friends who put it out here on a data set, about 1 gigabyte of data, and they tried to pull it across. The fastest we could get it across was 12 megabytes per second. That's less than 1/4 the highest rate, and it's certainly less than the lowest rate even of the data transfer. The average was 23.2 or something like that megabytes per second. Well, we could only get 12. And that was between 2 data centers. So that meant that, this simply didn't go across the internet. And so it had to be a local download. Plus, we found out some more about Guccifer 2. He put out 2 data sets. One dated the 5th of July and one dated the 1st of September. But we took a look at that, and with some help from Duncan Campbell and some of his friends over there, and found that if you looked only at minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, the 2 files, the sets of files from the September 1st and the 5th of July, merge into one continuous stream. Which means, very simply put, now the random probability of that happening is just too small to even consider. So the point is that that means that Guccifer 2 was playing with the data. He was manipulating the data, creating 2 separate files manually, separating. He did one download and separated it into 2 piles. Right. And then claimed 2 different downloads. And he did a range change on the date and the hour in the September material.
Right. They fixed the data. They were fixing the data to try to fit their narrative. And the real narrative, as I see it, Bill, is that the DNC wasn't hacked. The information was gotten by a whistleblower, probably Seth Rich. Julian Assange has all but said Seth Rich was the leaker or was
He's not the only one that said that.
Yeah, Kim.com.
Kim.com also said that.
That's right. And here's why it makes my blood boil. Because CNN and the Mockingbird mainstream media continue to convolute this story and lie and cover up the important facts that we're now talking about here. We're not going to hear CNN revisit this part of the story because those roads lead to Seth Rich, who was murdered, I would say assassinated by these people, by the deep state, because John Podesta, even himself, we have an email from Podesta saying, I'm all for making an example of the leaker. I think it was less than a month later, Seth Rich was dead. Seth Rich was the leaker of this information. That's my take. You agree?
But that's what others have said too. And I would also add that, the FBI knows, at least if there was an illegal or illicit recording of Cy Hirsch when he was talking to somebody.
Oh, that's right.
He alluded to the FBI having a report on their examination of Seth Rich's computer, where they said they found communications with WikiLeaks by Seth. And that Seth had asked for money for it and was provided some samples and offered more data. But also Ty Clevenger, another lawyer who did a FOIA from NSA saying he FOIA'd them for a request for any communications between Seth Rich, Julian Assange, Kim.com, and a number of other people. And NSA came back and told him, this is an official document on the web, they told him that they found 15 documents, 32 pages of data related to the FOIA request. But they were all classified and he couldn't have them. So, but there's evidence there. This is one of the reasons I was saying that to Pompeo when I met him in October of 2017, that the NSA, the intelligence agencies themselves, the FBI included, were lying to the president and to him. Even his own agency, he was the head of the CIA at the time. So, these people have information and they're not sharing it with people who are, in a position to make decisions about what should happen,
Yeah.
So this is really bad for our country,
It's
So
chilling.
let me ask you a question here that I think a lot of people would like to know. When the president says the FBI and the CIA are now required to turn these documents over to Bill Barr, will that happen?
It could very well. Most of it, they'll probably do most of it for sure, but some of it they might want to hide. The parts that might be involving exposing their crimes, they may want to hide that. That's what NSA typically does, and also CIA. So I mean, they all do it really. So, but if that happens, or if there's any inkling of that, the president should take action and fire the heads of those agencies, whatever it is. Just fire them. He's got the authority to do that. If they're not if he's given a direct order, which he just did, then if they don't follow that direct order, they're eligible to be fired.
Harley, let me just say this. I was going to respond to Bill there just by saying what's happening here is absolutely chilling. When we talk about Seth Rich, when we talk about what really has transpired here with the deep state in cooperation with the DNC, with all of these aspects of our government being weaponized against a sitting president, it's absolutely chilling because when you think about Seth Rich, you have to talk about wet works. You have to talk about what these people are capable of. And now they got caught with their pants down. And if all of this evidence spills out, for instance, according to whistleblower tapes, Brennan and Clapper utilized something called the hammer to spy on 159 Article 3 judges, the head of the secret FISA court, the Supreme Court Justice John Roberts, Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, business leaders, millions of innocent Americans, and Donald Trump. Montgomery, and this is the whistleblower from the NSA, Dennis Montgomery states that Trump was wiretapped for years because he alleges the CIA feared Trump. Our friend Dave Janda has been breaking this story out about the hammer, which was evidently a surveillance system of unimaginable power set up by Brennan, Clapper, and Obama. Now, regardless of the hammer, we know that the NSA was used to spy. And Bill, you can comment on that. But Harley, first, isn't this all just absolutely chilling? As CNN tells us, never mind any of this. Trump now wants to focus on the past, something that happened 3 years ago, and it makes no sense. It makes perfect sense if you want to save the republic.
That's right.
Here's the really chilling problem, which is that you have to look at what they're doing now to divert attention from this. This is Bolton talking about Iran preparing to attack U.S. interests based on intelligence from where? From Israel, Saudi Arabia, from the British. They're preparing operations for a possible war in the Middle East. Have we seen this before? And who is at the center of the last time this was done in 2003? Sir Richard Dearlove, who provided the fake dossier on weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein allegedly had. Now, who is Dearlove a patron to? Christopher Steele. So you have these operations that not only target individuals such as Seth Rich or whistleblowers, but target the whole population. And when Trump met with Putin, in his recent 90-minute conversation with Putin, what was the major topic? How can we avoid a new arms race, which would spend trillions of dollars to produce weapons, which if we ever used would wipe out the human race, when we're quibbling now about can we come up with a few $1 trillion for infrastructure? And so here you see Trump moving in a different direction, and you see the combined networks of British intelligence using the Israelis and others to carry out this operation. So it's not just chilling, It's evidence that we can use to bring this whole thing down.
Bill, your comments on the spying, on what's been going on here against this president. I do find it absolutely amusing that the DNC claims they were hacked by Russians and then wouldn't turn over the server to the FBI to allow that to be forensically investigated. Why?
Yeah.
Because their story is a lie. Their story is not true. Not that CNN will tell the American people about that. But your thoughts on Bucket 5, on DECLAS, on the hammer, on the spying that's been going on here, on any of this surveillance of millions of Americans and our sitting president?
Yeah, well, first let me finish up the data, the DNC data that was posted by WikiLeaks. We didn't talk about that.
Sure.
That data clearly showed fat file properties, which meant, very simply put, there's a program downloading data to a storage device like a thumb drive or a CD-ROM. That when it does that, it rounds off the last modified time of the file to the nearest even number. That's the property of all the files downloaded by for the DNC material on the 20 downloads of the 23rd, 25th, and 26th of May. All of them showed that fat file format, which meant the data was read to some type of storage device like a thumb drive or CD-ROM, and then physically transported before WikiLeaks could in fact post it. That meant, again, it's pointing back to somebody locally in the DNC, to the DNC network of the servers to be able to download it. So it's another issue. So that negates that as any possibility of being hacked. So then of course the spying is going on. This is one of the main reasons I objected to the terminology they were using as early as August of 2016. Because NSA has the Fairview, Stormbrew, Blarney tapping points inside the United States and around the world by the hundreds of them. There's over 100 tapping points inside the United States alone. This is where they're taking the data off the fiber optic lines. All of the light passing over there is digitized, is reduced to sessionized communications between people, and then it's stored by NSA. So they have everything. When they asked for the 33,000 missing emails from Hillary, I said, NSA's got them, go over there and get them, because they have them. Because that's the storage is, I mean, how else could NSA analysts look at their lovers locally, their local lovers, and see if they're cheating on them? Well, they could, because they've got all their phone calls and emails and chatter and everything, so they could go in and review all the data on them. That's how they got it.
Right.
And that's how Tim Clementi, the former FBI agent, after the Boston bombing, said on CNN, he said, well, if the wife of one of the Tsarnaev brothers doesn't tell the truth about the phone conversation she had with her husband before he did the bombing, then the FBI has a way of getting back to it, find out what was really there, and then she'll be in trouble. Well, the reason they have the way to get back is they've recorded it, and they have a recording for a certain period of time, and then they digitize it by these automated translation programs and do scanning of it for potential highlights in terms of things that thresholds. It has to pass a certain threshold before they'll have a person look at it. But they're doing all of this, and it's done on everybody in the United States. My estimate was there's at least 280 million of us in that database, not just once but thousands of times.
Can I ask you something, Bill? And
Yeah.
that bothers me, and it's always bothered me. And so I'm not making a case at all for that type of surveillance. It shouldn't exist in a free republic, but it does exist. And there is a hero in this story, a hero that broke ranks with the Obama administration. And had he not done it, this president may have never found out that he was being surveilled. And that hero is Admiral Mike Rogers, who saw some very disturbing queries coming into the NSA database, search queries that shouldn't have been happening. They were anomalous. I think he rooted it out and figured out what was going on and went to Trump Tower and warned the president. And the very next day, the president and his campaign, all his folks, moved out of Trump Tower. Can you just talk about that? Because even though I don't agree with what the NSA is doing or has been doing with their surveillance of Americans, at least in this case, there was a white hat, and it was Mike Rogers.
Well, see, I have a fundamental problem with that too, because we all take an oath. Everybody in government takes an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. And what NSA was doing is a violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, the First, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments, because not only does NSA is the repository for all the data, but they make that available to FBI and DEA to access and do interrogations of people for criminal activity. And that's what they've been doing also. And this is under Mueller, by the way. From the very beginning in 2001, Mueller's been involved with this. I mean, he was involved with a hospital visit for Ashcroft back in 2004, and that's what the whole program, Stellar Wind, was what that was about. So, and they finally weasel worded through the help of their lawyers, you know, at the OLC with you and Addington and Gonzalez, they finally weasel worded some justification in secret, by the way, so that nobody else knew it. You know, it was our secret government in action. So this is what they did to keep this bulk acquisition on everybody. This is power over everyone. You know, this is how they can use it against the Tea Party, which they did, against the Occupy group, against anybody getting politically active, like religious groups, or against people who are doing things that you don't particularly care about, like Jim Risen or Jim Rosen, the Associated Press, or Elliot Spitzer, or you know, trying to go after the bankers for defrauding people, which they did. So, and we bailed them out for $700 billion or something like that. So, you know, it's the idea is they want to keep this power in the government. Now, our founders never intended that to be the case. And in fact, they've all been violating, not only is it sedition against the processing of the government, changing, you know, basically disrupting the process of government, but also it's sedition against the founding principles of, and treason against the founding principles of this nation, which are embedded in our Constitution.
Right. So I think what you're saying about Elliot Spitzer, just to flush that out, he wanted to go after the bankers, was being very public, and then they used this information that was in the NSA database to learn about his communing with prostitutes or hiring prostitutes or whatever the hell he was doing. And so they brought him down and ended his career and made an example of him. Is that what you're saying? So they weaponize the information. They gather all of the information, and when they want to target any individual, they can just dig through and selectively pick the stuff to ruin somebody's life.
Retroactively. And in fact, they can modify that data too, like they did with Tom Drake. They found papers at his house that were marked unclassified by NSA, and they crossed that out and classified them, and then they charged him with having classified material. And then Jim Bamford found a lot of this same material put out there on the web as unclassified by NSA, and he introduced it in the court, and the whole case fell apart because of that. Yeah. Well, I mean, those are felonies. That's fabricating evidence for a court of law for a criminal prosecution. Those are felonies. Why aren't those people in jail? Well, because they're a part of the Department of Just Us. And that was all under the Obama group. And so, you know, now we have Trump, who is unpredictable, according to them. And that's great, because now he can come after them. And he's authorizing Attorney General Barr to do that. And I just hope Barr follows through and finds all the dirt, all the criminality, and does referrals to a grand jury for indictment. That's what he needs to do.
That's right.
If he starts doing that, then we're in business.
That's right. Harley, let me ask you this. We are standing on the precipice of history. We are at the mountaintop. This is what we've been waiting for, and it's going to go one way or the other. Either this all continues to be covered up or it all spills out. And as Joe DeGenova has been saying, John Brennan doesn't need one attorney. He needs 5. John Brennan is going to prison. Now, if that happens, I believe we have a chance to restore the republic. If it doesn't happen, then it's business as usual, and the 2020 elections come. Maybe Trump gets reelected, maybe he doesn't, but that's the death knell for the republic. And the point I want to make is that this deep state, these people who are now in a panic, this is the same deep state that had been targeting Lyndon LaRouche his entire life. And it needs to be said that these are the people. This is the shadow government. This is the 7th floor deep state shadow government Hillary set up. It's all in the wide open, and it just couldn't be more important. We stand at the precipice.
Well, Sean, as this story is unfolding, we're seeing the falling out among thieves. You have Brennan and Clapper pointing the finger at Comey over the use of the Steele dossier in the FISA filing, and then Comey said, no, it was them. You have Comey and Loretta Lynch going at each other. You know, I think even though it's not being made fully public yet, it's the New York Times, the Washington Post are continuing to cover it up virtually full. And one of the things that they're covering up at the core is this question of the so-called Russian hacking. So I think what Bill has done, and you want to talk about heroes in this thing, you know, Bill Binney has been a hero by working with people to get the story out. despite the attack on him and his collaborators with the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. And why is he doing it? Because he's a patriot. He's committed to, as you can hear, to protecting the Constitution of our country. Now, I want to just say one thing to the listeners, because I know people are excited about this. A lot of people have been waiting for it. They're now rubbing their hands and saying, oh yeah, now we're finally going to get them. Don't count on it. If we don't have an outpouring from the American people, it's not going to happen. I just wrote an article where I was reviewing Eisenhower's discussion of the military-industrial complex right before he left the presidency in 1961. And what he said is an alert and educated citizenry is the buffer that we have against the abuse of power coming from the military-industrial complex. Now, what LaRouche did is dedicate his life to getting that story out. People like Bill Binney and the other whistleblowers are dedicating their life to get the story out. The people who are listening to these broadcasts, and you, Sean, are doing a very good job of continuing to keep this out there. The people listening have to spread it, have to get the story out there to give the president the backup so he'll keep going. Every time he goes to a rally and sees people cheering him when he says we're going to lock them up, that gives him more courage. This president, whether you like him or not, and there's some things he's done that I don't particularly care for, he's demonstrated courage far beyond any person in his office in taking on these networks.
That's right.
And so I think it's crucial that people realize this is what we have to do. If we want this to succeed, get the story out. Make sure that Bill's voice is heard. Make sure the SGT report goes viral. Don't let them shut it down as they tried to do before, as YouTube tried to do.
Yeah, let me just say one thing, Harley. I agree with you, but in the interest of seeing the cup as half full in good news, I think that the American people are awake. Again, look at Trump's rallies. Look at Hillary Clinton's rallies, right? She couldn't fill the corner of a gym. Look at CNN's ratings. They're plummeting on the back of the Russiagate fable blowing up. It's a paper tiger. The emperor has no clothes, and now people can see these naked idiots for who they are. And it couldn't be more important to state the fact that I heard the other day Rush Limbaugh gets more listeners on a daily basis than all of the Mockingbird mainstream media outlets combined. And Rush Limbaugh is telling this story. Rush Limbaugh is naming the names. The American people know the truth and are finding out the truth, but CNN is a paper tiger, and they want you to think that there's no there.
Well, Sean, my point is that as people know the truth, spread it.
Yeah.
Work with us to make sure the story gets out. And don't let it stop at Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is just another cog in this machine. You've got to go to the higher-ups, the people who give the orders to the CIA and the FBI. This is the so-called military-industrial complex, the corporate boards, the globalist corporate boards that make financial policy and strategic policy, that are looking for wars as a way of distracting people, even if those wars could lead to nuclear war.
Right.
So I think it's crucial that even as we see the glass as half full or 3/4 full, let's make it full, overflowing. Get the story out in every corner of the country. I'm doing it in Europe. You know, I think it's really crucial that we have that sense of victory within our sights.
Yeah, amen. All right, well said, Harley, and thank you for all you're doing. Bill, final word from you. Say anything you want. If there's anything we haven't covered that you want to, now's the time. But my thanks to you for being a patriot and a whistleblower and for doing all you've done to help restore the republic.
Well, thanks. And I agree a lot with what Harley's been saying, too. I mean, the important point is that people need to realize that democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to get out there and play. You got to be in the game. Otherwise, people will take power away. I mean, that's like in Washington, that's one of the main things. They operate on 3 words, basically: power, control, and money. A lot of I call the first swindle of the U.S. public, the idea that you had to give up privacy for security. That's been a lie from the beginning. What has happened as a result of that, of this bulk acquisition of data on everybody, so they could say, we have all the data now, you know? Now we should be able to find them. That only made it even orders of magnitude worse to find the real threats coming. So that's why even internally in NSA and MI5 and GCHQ, they had articles being published saying, you know, we're just overburdened with overload. We can't see the threats. Well, guess what? That's why they have failed at stopping all the real threats from happening. That's why these attacks are successful. And they're performed by people who are already known to be bad guys, and yet they can't stop them. Why? Because, again, it's too much data. But that was the idea. That was the first swindle. So in order to do that, in order to collect everything, it cost you almost 1,000 times what it did to do a targeted approach, which we demonstrated with the Thin Thread program, and they killed that because it didn't cost enough money, and they wouldn't build an empire, wouldn't build up knowledge and power over everybody. So that's what Cheney and Hayden meant and wanted from the beginning, also Tenet at CIA. So that's the route they took on that one. The second swindle was cybersecurity. You know, think about it. When in fact, all of these hundreds of millions of lines of source code comprising tens of thousands of attacks have been known by NSA and CIA, and they've been compromised now in the Vault 7 material by WikiLeaks and also by Shadow Broker, I believe it was, for the NSA data that showed weaknesses in existing weaknesses in firewalls, operating systems, servers, switches, networks around the world that NSA and CIA have known about and have taken advantage of, because then it allows them to look into people's activities, see what they're doing and saying, but they haven't told anybody to fix them or what to fix. So that we've all been sitting here vulnerable for it to be attacked, and having any of these attacks be discovered by other people around the world, other governments or other hackers around the world, so that we're all sitting here vulnerable. And when we get attacked, they come around and say, well, for cybersecurity, we need more money for cybersecurity. Well, if they fix the problems they know, maybe we'd have some cybersecurity, you know? So that's another swindle. And then the third swindle coming along is this new Cold War they're trying to generate with Russia again. So they can swindle us out of a few trillions of dollars on that one.
Right.
So, you know, this is all about money, power, and control. And it's all being handled by the swamp. And the president is exactly right. The swamp needs to be drained. And I'm talking both parties. I mean, the Democrats are worse than Republicans, but the Republicans, some of them are just as bad. So, you know, we need to clean house, period.
Well, I guess if there's a miracle in all of this, it's the fact that the Wicked Witch didn't get into the White House, because all of this would have continued forever. All of this would have continued forever with Hillary Clinton in the White House. All of it. All of this collusion, the real spying, the real surveillance, the real deep state treason, it would have all been covered up. And I guess the hammer and whatever spy database they've built, that would have continued in perpetuity to be used against the enemies of them, which are the patriots. And that would have gone on forever, and that would have been the final nail in the coffin of the republic.
Let me add one point to that hammer issue. The hammer program, as far as I can see, was run by CIA. And the point was that the NSA already had their massive collection on everybody anyway. That was called the Stellar Wind program, and it had the tapping points for the upstream collection of everything on the fiber networks, everything, you know. So they didn't have to do a hammer because they already had all the data. But if CIA wanted to do it and have it separately and not be, because all of anybody querying the NSA data goes through a system where they get recorded.
Right, Mike Rogers, exactly. Right.
Their queries go right in there, and they are registered. They know they made this query on this date and got this data. So NSA's got that information. But if CIA wanted to do it, but not let NSA or anybody else in the government know about it, they could set up a separate secret program like Hammer and do a subset of tapping in the critical points around Washington or decision-making centers, and then take in that data and have it scanned and sessionized and locally examined by members of CIA only, so that nobody knew they were doing it.
That's
much
right.
Like CIA spying on the Feinstein group when they were doing the study of torture by CIA, you know.
Right. Hey, final word. I want to ask you guys about this important subject, and that's Julian Assange.
Yeah.
Harley, is it your opinion, as it is mine, as long as Julian Assange is in the UK, he's in grave danger, in my opinion. I think they're going to make him stay there for probably a year and do hard time in the equivalent of a, level 5 hellhole. And I'm really concerned about his safety. What do you think will happen if he gets extradited here? It would seem to me that this president would embrace the truth that would come from Julian Assange, because Julian Assange holds the keys to the Seth Rich story and so much more. But gentlemen, your thoughts on the abhorrent treatment of Julian Assange?
Well, I agree with you, Sean, that he's in grave danger while he's in prison in Great Britain. I think the new indictments that came out, 17 counts that were announced today, show that they intend to bury him somewhere in the prison system and not really allow him to defend himself. And I think this is something that people who can talk to President Trump about it should make the point you made. It's not just a question of Trump's survival. It's a question of the nation. Why is a whistleblower put in prison when they're reporting a crime against the Constitution? And that's in fact what whistleblowers do. They call attention to the fact that people with the power of the government behind them are abusing that power to take away people's rights and freedoms. Why should that be a criminal offense? And I think if we don't turn this around, then all the good Trump is doing with the declassification and everything else will collapse, because it will essentially put a chilling factor in anybody who wishes to come forward with the truth.
Right. Bill?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this is a direct assault on the First Amendment, and it's a threat to reporters everywhere in the world. Not just, I mean, for example, if some of our reporters start reporting some crimes that being committed internally in the countries of China and Russia, are they going to be allowed to, extradite our reporters for exposing their crimes like that? I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, these people, they've got really finite brains. They're not thinking this through. It's really, and really every reporter in the world should start to think now, what's going to happen to me if I do the wrong thing,
Right.
So, and maybe some of them who have been lying about Russiagate for the last 2.5 years should also rethink what they've been doing. Like the Luke Harding guy at The Guardian, who wrote a book called Collusion. Why is he still working at The Guardian when it's been proven there's no collusion?
Yeah.
I just like to make one final point on this question of making this thing really stick. What we do at LaRouche PAC is that we every day put out reports. We just had a wonderful session two sessions actually, with Bill Binney and Larry Johnson that are up on our website discussing these things. Every day we put material out. And once a week I write an article. And people who would like to work with us, as your listeners know, I'm very open to discussion with people and bringing people in. If you want to work with us to win this fight, you can contact me, and I'll give you my email. It's harleysch@gmail.com. That's harleysch@gmail.com. And I actually love to hear from your listeners, because even the ones who disagree are quite impassioned and interested.
Yeah, they are. It's the best audience on all of YouTube, and the most supportive audience, I have to tell you guys. Yeah, and Bill, how do we follow you? What's the best way to reach you and follow your work?
Well, I mean, I basically occasionally write with DIPS with Larry Johnson or Ray McGovern and write articles there. And it gets published mostly on Consortium News, because mainstream media doesn't want to touch it. They don't want to hear the bad news about the lies they've been telling. So it's mostly there. I mean, otherwise, I already get over 200 emails from everybody around the world every day. So, it's kind of hard for me to keep up. I don't have a secretary or a staff. So.
Yeah, no, I feel your pain on that. I try very hard to reply, at least a courtesy reply to everybody who emails me, and it's getting harder and harder as each week goes by. Yeah. But we do love all of the patriots out there, and where we go one, we go all, guys. This is our time. This is the time to stand for the Republic and stand for truth. Yeah. And Harley, you made a great point. Julian Assange, a whistleblowing journalist, a truth teller, thrown in prison. Meanwhile, these weaponized mockingbirds at CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, they walk free. We live in upside down world, clown world, as Paul Joseph Watson would say, and enough is enough. Humanity's waking up. The people in Britain want Brexit. Theresa May just announced she's resigning. The tide is turning, folks. Our cup is half full. Now let's stand together with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, with our God-given sovereignty, and let's just get this thing done. Let's push it over the finish line. Guys, our guests have been Harley Schlanger and Bill Binney. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Sean.
The pleasure's all mine, believe me. All right, guys, we're going to keep our eye very close on this story, and we'll get another interview with these two fine gentlemen again as soon as breaking news warrants. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your support. A special shout out to my patrons who are helping us stay in the game as Google and YouTube change the rules of the game in the middle of the game to try to silence us. We love you guys. And for real news 24/7, visit us at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.